There's a quiet kind of panic that starts to hum beneath the surface in your 20s. Not loud enough to scream, just a whisper that gets a little sharper with every birthday. You scroll through perfect lives, chase milestones you're not sure you want, and smile when someone says, "You've got time." But deep down, you're not so sure. What if the real mistake we make isn't failure, but never stopping long enough to ask, "What am I even chasing?" We don't usually notice the moment we start running. It happens quietly, like stepping onto a treadmill that was already moving too fast. At 23, someone gets a promotion, and you feel behind. At 25, a friend gets married, and you wonder if love is now a deadline. At 28, someone launches a startup or buys a house or goes to Bali for the third time this year, and suddenly your life feels paused. So you speed up. More productivity. More optimization. More figuring it out. You fill calendars. You chase goals that sound good when spoken out loud, but the truth is, most of us don't know what we're actually building. We just know we don't want to be left behind. This is the velocity trap, moving faster not because you're clear, but because you're afraid. And the irony is, speed often disguises aimlessness. You can work a 60-hour week, post your wins, hit your metrics, and still feel like none of it really touches you. But slowing down? That feels dangerous. Because then the questions get louder. Why am I doing this? What am I trying to prove? Who am I trying to become? Those are uncomfortable questions, not because they're hard to answer, but because they force you to admit you've been running from them. The biggest mistake isn't choosing the wrong path. It's assuming the fastest one must be the right one. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do in your 20s is to stop running. At some point, we all internalize this invisible checklist. Graduate by 22. Career by 25. Marriage by 28. Stability by 30. Happiness, somewhere in between. And even if no one says it out loud, it's there, a subtle pressure in every family dinner, every reunion, every birthday post you hesitate to upload because you're not there yet. But who decided this timeline was real? It's strange how easily we inherit other people's scripts. You grow up thinking you're writing your own life, until you realize you've just been filling in blanks someone else left for you. The right timeline is a myth disguised as structure. It tells you that falling behind is failure. That uncertainty is immaturity. That deviation is danger. But here's the quiet truth. You are not late. You are not early. You are right on time for your life. Comparison makes you forget that your path might need more wandering, more solitude, more breaking and rebuilding. Some people bloom in chaos. Some need a detour to remember who they are. Some don't find clarity until they've thrown away every plan they thought they needed. The problem isn't that we miss milestones. It's that we measure our lives by them, instead of asking whether they were ever meant for us at all. There is no universal schedule for becoming who you're meant to be. There's only listening, and the patience to hear your own voice beneath the noise. In your 20s, people love to talk about your potential. It sounds like a compliment, and sometimes it is. But it can also feel like a trap. Potential is future-focused. It's the version of you that hasn't arrived yet. The better, smarter, more successful you that's just around the corner, if you hustle hard enough. It creates this unspoken pressure to constantly become, without ever learning how to be. You start to treat yourself like a project. Fix this habit. Build that skill. Read more. Network better. Meditate, journal, lift, repeat. Even self-care becomes performance. But somewhere along the way, you forget how to just exist in your own life. Not as an unfinished product. Not as a walking resume. Just a person. Breathing. Observing. Feeling. Living. You can spend an entire decade striving for potential and miss the quiet beauty of presence. The way your coffee tastes different when you're not scrolling. The feeling of sun on your face when you leave your apartment without headphones. The unexpected intimacy of a conversation that wasn't planned. Presence doesn't have a 5-year plan. It doesn't make you marketable. But it does make life feel real, grounded in moments, not metrics. The biggest mistake isn't wasting your potential. It's never realizing that you're already enough, even without chasing it. It's easy to confuse motion with meaning. To fill your days with tasks and call it purpose. To check boxes and tell yourself you're building a life. But busyness is seductive. Because it feels like progress, even when it's just noise. You wake up to notifications. Answer emails before you've had breakfast. Schedule back-to-back calls. Rush through errands. Fall into bed too wired to sleep, but too tired to think. And somewhere in all that movement, you forget to ask the most important question. Why am I doing any of this? Our culture rewards the grind. The late nights. The full calendars. The burnout framed as ambition. But no one teaches you how to sit in silence with yourself. No one teaches you how to recognize the difference between a full life and a meaningful one. Busyness is armor. It protects you from the discomfort of introspection. From realizing you might not like the person you're becoming. From wondering whether the ladder you're climbing is even leaning against the right wall. But meaning doesn't shout. It whispers. And you can't hear it until the noise stops. It's found in small, unremarkable moments. A quiet walk. A conversation that lingers. A decision that aligns, even if no one claps for it. The real danger isn't falling behind. It's spending years going fast in the wrong direction. You don't need to do more. You need to know why you're doing it. You've probably done this. Captured a photo not for the memory, but for how it might look later. Chosen words that sound wiser online than they feel in your mouth. Smiled for something that hurt. Because sadness doesn't trend well. We live in a world curated for applause. Filtered moments. Perfect timing. An endless scroll of highlights, trimmed and tuned until they feel like reality. And the danger isn't just comparison, it's performance. You start shaping your choices around optics. What looks impressive? What earns validation? What says I'm doing okay even when you're quietly falling apart? This is how identity starts to fracture. You become two people. The one who lives, and the one who performs. But you can't live a true life if you're always editing it for an audience. You start shrinking the messy parts. The doubts, the rejections, the slow mornings where nothing makes sense. And yet, those are the moments that shape you. Growth is not always photogenic. Healing rarely comes with good lighting, and real transformation, the kind that shifts your bones, happens when no one is watching. You don't owe the world a perfect narrative. You owe yourself an honest one. Because at some point, you'll look back. And the question won't be, did it look good? It'll be, did it feel real? There's a discomfort that creeps in when life gets quiet. No deadlines. No plans. Just space. And instead of peace, what you feel is panic. We've been taught that stillness means you're stuck. If you're not moving forward, then surely, something is wrong. But stillness isn't failure. It's just unfamiliar. You see, motion gives us something to point to. Something to prove we're trying. Stillness doesn't come with proof. It comes with questions. What if I don't know what I want? What if I've been pretending? What if I stop and nothing meaningful takes its place? That's the fear. That we'll pause and realize we don't know who we are without momentum. But this is where growth actually begins. Stillness invites truth. It reveals the habits you've outgrown. The relationships you're holding onto out of fear. The goals that never belonged to you in the first place. It gives your intuition space to breathe. It lets your nervous system catch up to your ambition. Sometimes, the most productive thing you can do is sit in the silence and listen, not to the noise of expectation, but to the small voice that only speaks when the world gets quiet. We glorify the hustle. But stillness is what teaches you how to return to yourself. It's not where you get lost. It's where you get found. It starts early. You do something well, get the grade, win the praise, land the job, and people smile. They tell you you're talented, focused, impressive. And slowly, without realizing it, you start to believe that your value lives in what you can achieve. You become the hard worker, the overachiever, the one who figures it out. But what happens when you don't win? When things fall through? When you really try, and it still doesn't work out? If your identity is built on achievement, failure feels existential. It doesn't just hurt, it threatens who you think you are. So you keep performing. You chase the next goal before you've even processed the last one. Not because you're ambitious, but because stopping feels like disappearing. This is the mistake no one warns you about. Believing your worth is conditional, tied to output, measured in milestones. But you are not your job title, not your GPA, your income, your follower count. You're not the sum of your productivity. You are the quiet strength that stays when the titles fall away, the resilience that keeps showing up, even when nothing works out. The curiosity, the kindness, the humanity, none of which need achievement to exist. The hardest and most necessary work in your 20s is learning how to be enough without earning it. Not just when you're thriving, but when you're in between. When you feel lost. When you have nothing to prove. Especially then, there's a moment, maybe more than one, when you feel a pull. A gut instinct. A quiet knowing. You don't have the words for it, but it's there. And instead of following it, you Google it. You ask 10 people what they think. You look for a podcast episode, a Reddit thread, a YouTube video, anything to validate what you already feel. Because deep down, you don't trust yourself yet. We live in an age of constant advice. Guides. Blueprints. Frameworks. Other people's answers wrapped in confidence. And slowly, without noticing, you hand over the steering wheel. Not because you don't care, but because it's safer to be told what to do than to risk being wrong on your own. But intuition isn't built by certainty. It's built by listening, messing up, trying again, noticing the difference between your fear and your truth. Every time you ignore that small inner voice in favor of someone else's louder one, it gets quieter. Not because it disappears, but because it stops expecting you to hear it. The real mistake isn't asking for guidance. It's assuming that someone else always knows better than you. Yes, mentors help. Yes, there's wisdom in listening. But no one else is living your life. No one else dreams with your heart, or aches with your regrets. Learning to trust your intuition is less about being right, and more about being real. With yourself. Because that voice inside you? It's not random. It's remembering who you are before the world told you who to be. At some point, your 20s start to feel like a puzzle. Every decision becomes a calculation. What job will lead to the best long-term outcome? Which city has the most opportunity? Is this relationship the one, or a detour? You approach life like a strategy game. Maximize happiness. Minimize regret. Avoid mistakes. Optimize for success. But here's the thing. You're not an algorithm. And life isn't a spreadsheet to perfect. Treating life like a problem to solve turns uncertainty into an enemy. It makes every pause feel like a failure, every detour like a threat. And yet, some of the most beautiful parts of your story will arrive through the things you couldn't plan. Falling in love unexpectedly. Taking a job for the wrong reason and meeting the right person. Missing a train and seeing a sunset you weren't supposed to catch. Life resists being solved. It wants to be felt. There's a difference between direction and control. Between intentionality and obsession. Between building a future and trying to escape the messiness of the present. The biggest mistake isn't uncertainty. It's believing you're broken because you don't have a clear answer for everything. You were never meant to figure it all out. You were meant to live through it, to let the questions shape you. To walk the blurry path without needing to see the end. Because some truths only arrive once you stop trying so hard to solve everything. And finally start listening to what life is trying to show you. So much of your 20s feel like a rehearsal. Like the real thing hasn't started yet. You're just preparing for the dream job, the real relationship, the version of you who finally has it together. But what if this is it? Not the finished product, but the becoming. The in-between. The awkward stretch. The part where nothing quite fits, and that's the point. We're taught to idolize transformation, the after photo, the success story. But no one romanticizes the middle. The long mornings. The self-doubt. The half-done plans. The days that feel like placeholders. And yet, these are the days that make you. The biggest mistake we make in our 20s isn't being lost, or slow, or unsure. It's thinking we shouldn't be. Because the truth is, clarity doesn't come all at once. Healing isn't linear. And growth rarely announces itself. It just shows up later, in the quiet strength you didn't know you were building. So if you're unsure, if you're scared, or scattered, or trying to hold it together with duct tape and overthinking, you're not failing. You are in the process. This decade isn't a detour. It's the terrain. It doesn't need to look impressive. It just needs to be lived. Fully. Honestly. Unapologetically. Because one day, you'll look back and realize the becoming was the most beautiful part. If any part of this felt familiar, the pressure, the noise, the quiet questions you carry, know that you're not alone. This decade isn't about getting everything right. It's about learning to stay present while it's messy. And trusting the becoming isn't something you rush, it's something you allow. If this video gave you something to reflect on, consider sharing it with someone else who might need the same reminder. And if you'd like more moments like this, quiet, honest, human, feel free to subscribe and stay a while. We're all just figuring it out. And that's more than okay.